My boyfriend told me to remove all my body hair. I made him go first. I'd been dating Kevin for 8 months and everything was pretty good until we planned our first beach vacation together. We were packing for Miami and I pulled out my new bikini to show him. He looked at it, then looked at me, and said we needed to talk about something important before the trip. He said he'd been meaning to bring it up but didn't know how. Then he told me I needed to remove all my body hair before we left. Not just legs and bikini line, everything. Arms, stomach, even the tiny blonde hairs on my back that you can only see in direct sunlight. I laughed because obviously he was joking. He wasn't. He pulled up photos on his phone of his ex-girlfriend at the beach, zoomed in to show me her completely hairless arms. Said she understood proper grooming and he thought I would too by now. When I asked what was wrong with how I looked, he said nothing was wrong exactly, but he had standards and body hair on women made him physically uncomfortable. He actually used the word uncomfortable. Like my natural body was some kind of affliction. He'd already booked me an appointment at a spa for a full body wax the next day. Paid for it and everything. Said it was his treat because he wanted me to feel beautiful. I asked what if I didn't want to. He said that was fine, but he'd have to reconsider the trip because he wouldn't be able to enjoy himself knowing what was under my swimsuit. The next day, I went to the spa. Not for the wax, but to change the appointment. Told them my boyfriend would be coming instead and to give him the full treatment he'd booked. Everything. Then I told Kevin the spa had called about a mix-up and he needed to go confirm the appointment in person. While he was gone, I found his laptop and saw his browser history. He'd been on forums about training your girlfriend to meet standards. There were actual guides about gradually making women remove body hair, by starting with small complaints then escalating to ultimatums. He'd bookmarked posts about how to make it seem like her idea. When Kevin came back from the spa, he was confused. Said they'd tried to wax him and he'd walked out. He asked what kind of sick joke I was playing. I said I thought he wanted us both to be hairless for the beach. He said that was completely different because men were supposed to have body hair. It was natural for them. I asked why it wasn't natural for me. He said because women's body hair was gross and unattractive while men's showed masculinity. I said I'd only go hairless if he did too. Everything. Arms, legs, chest, back, everywhere except his head. He said I was being ridiculous and trying to emasculate him. I said I was just asking for equality. If hair disgusted him so much, he should understand. Kevin refused. Said I was manipulating the situation and he was just trying to help me look my best. He spent 3 days sending me articles about why women should be hairless. Stuff about hygiene and femininity and what men really want. He'd leave razors on my pillow. He bought hair removal cream and put it in my shower. He even told his friends I was refusing to groom myself properly and asked them to talk to me about it. His buddy Josh actually pulled me aside at a party to say Kevin was worried about me letting myself go. The night before the trip, Kevin gave me an ultimatum. Either I removed everything or he was going to Miami alone and we were done. He'd already talked to his sister and she agreed to go with him instead. He said plenty of women would love a boyfriend who cared enough about their appearance to pay for professional grooming. That's when I agreed. I told him he was right and I'd do it in the morning before our flight. Kevin was so happy he took me out to dinner to celebrate my decision to be reasonable. The next morning while Kevin was sleeping, I took his electric razor and carefully removed exactly half his body hair. Just the left side, left leg, left arm, left side of his chest and back. Perfect straight line down the middle. He was so focused on getting ready he didn't notice. I'd put his clothes on the bathroom counter so he got dressed without looking in the full mirror. At the airport, Kevin wore shorts and a tank top because it was already hot. People started staring immediately. TSA asked if he was okay. Kevin didn't understand what was happening until he saw himself on the security monitor. One completely hairy side, one completely smooth side. He stood there staring at the screen like someone had just told him his dog died. His mouth opened and closed without any sound coming out. I watched his eyes move down the security monitor, taking in the full picture of what I'd done. The left side of his body looked like it belonged to a completely different person than the right side. People behind us in line were definitely noticing now. Someone giggled. Another person whispered to their friend and pointed. Kevin's face went from confused to angry so fast I almost missed the middle part. His neck turned red first, then his cheeks, then his whole face looked like he'd been sitting in the sun for hours. He spun around to face me and his voice came out way too loud for an airport. He started yelling about how I'd destroyed him and ruined everything. The words came out fast and jumbled together. Something about mutilation and betrayal and how could I do this to him right before our vacation. His hands were waving around and his voice kept getting higher. The TSA agents who'd been checking bags at the next scanner stopped what they were doing. One of them, a woman with her hair pulled back tight, walked over to us. She put her hand up like she was directing traffic and asked if there was a problem. Her partner, a younger guy with glasses, moved closer too. They both had that look people get when they're trying to figure out if a situation is about to get worse. I kept my voice calm and friendly. Told them everything was totally fine. Said Kevin had just noticed his grooming choices for the first time today and was a bit surprised. The woman agent looked at Kevin, then at me, then back at Kevin. Her eyes went down to his legs where you could see the line between hairy and smooth running straight down the middle of his left calf. Someone in line behind us laughed out loud. Then another person laughed. Pretty soon there were at least 5 people trying not to crack up. One guy pulled out his phone and I'm pretty sure he started recording. The TSA woman's mouth twitched like she was fighting a smile, but she kept her professional face on. She asked Kevin if he was okay to continue through security. Kevin didn't answer her. He just grabbed his carry-on bag from the conveyor belt and stormed past both agents. He walked so fast I had to jog a few steps to keep up. I still had both our boarding passes in my hand. Part of me wondered if I should just let him go. Let him walk out of the airport and deal with this himself. But I followed him anyway, past the security checkpoint and back toward the entrance. People stared as he went by. A little kid pointed at his legs and asked his mom why that man looked funny. Kevin's face somehow got even redder. He pushed through a group of travelers near the ticket counters and headed straight for the exit doors. The parking garage was even hotter than outside. The concrete and metal trapped all the heat and made the air feel thick. Kevin threw his bag on the ground next to our car and ripped his tank top off over his head. He held it in one hand and used the other to run down his chest and stomach, feeling the line where his body hair stopped. He was screaming again, asking me if I was insane, asking how I could do this to him. His voice echoed off the concrete walls and ceiling. A car alarm went off somewhere on another level. Kevin kept touching his chest like he couldn't believe what he was feeling. The line was perfect. I'd been really careful with the razor to make it completely straight. One side had his normal dark chest hair. The other side was smooth as glass. I reminded him about the last 3 days. Told him he'd spent all that time trying to pressure me into doing the exact same thing. Actually worse, because he wanted me totally hairless everywhere. I said at least I only asked him to meet me halfway. Literally halfway. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Kevin stopped touching his chest and stared at me. He called me vindictive. Said this was completely different because people expected women to be groomed properly. But men were supposed to have body hair. It was natural for them. I asked him to explain why his comfort with his body mattered more than my comfort with mine. He opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came out at first. Then he said something about how it was just different, and I was twisting everything around to make him look bad. He picked his shirt up off the ground and tried to put it back on, but the parking garage was like an oven. Within seconds, he was sweating through the fabric. He pulled it off again and stood there with his half-hairy chest on display. A couple walked past our car, heading to theirs. The woman looked at Kevin, then looked again. She grabbed her husband's arm and they both stared. The husband said something I couldn't hear, but the woman covered her mouth. They walked faster to their car. Kevin saw them staring and his whole body went stiff. He demanded I drive him to a barber or salon right now to fix what I did. His voice cracked on the word fix. I told him if we left now, we'd miss our flight. Asked him if his appearance really mattered more than the vacation he'd been planning for weeks. The vacation he'd threatened to take without me if I didn't remove all my body hair. Kevin said there was no way he was getting on a plane looking like this. No way he was going to the beach where hundreds of people would see him. He said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world, like of course he couldn't be seen in public with half his body hair missing. The irony hit me so hard I almost laughed. He was canceling our entire trip because he was embarrassed about his body hair. The exact thing he'd been pressuring me about for days. I pointed out that he was ready to cancel on me for the exact same reason 3 days ago. Kevin's face twisted up like I'd said something totally wrong. He said it wasn't the same thing at all. Said I was twisting his words around to make him look bad. He kept wiping sweat off his forehead with the back of his hand. The parking garage felt like it was getting hotter by the minute. I asked him how it was different. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out for a few seconds. Then he said something about how women had different grooming standards than men, and everyone knew that. His voice got louder with each word. A family with 2 kids walked past our car. Both kids stared at Kevin's chest. The mom pulled them along faster. Kevin saw them looking, and his whole face went red again. He grabbed his tank top off the ground and held it in front of his chest like a shield. I told him we needed to leave before security came to check on us. He looked around the parking garage like he was expecting someone to jump out. Then he nodded and got in the passenger seat. The drive back to our apartment took 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Kevin sat sideways in his seat the whole time. He kept his body angled toward the door so anyone in other cars couldn't see his left side. Every time we stopped at a red light, he ducked down a little. His phone kept buzzing in his lap. He'd pick it up, look at the screen, then put it back down. Over and over. I asked him what was happening on his phone. He said people were texting him about the airport. Asked how many people saw what happened. I said probably a lot since TSA stopped him in the middle of security. He made this sound in his throat like a groan. Said this was the worst day of his life. I almost laughed but caught myself. The worst day of his life was experiencing a tiny piece of what he'd tried to make me do. We pulled into our apartment complex and Kevin practically ran from the car to our door. He kept his arms crossed over his chest the whole way. Inside, he went straight to the bathroom and locked the door behind him. I heard him turn on all the lights. Then I heard him swearing. Really loud. The kind of swearing you do when you're alone and think no one can hear you. Drawers started slamming. He was pulling everything out looking for something. I sat down on the couch and waited. More swearing came from the bathroom, then the sound of the medicine cabinet opening and closing. Hard. The bathroom mirror has really bright lights around it. He was probably seeing the line down his body even more clearly now. I heard the electric razor turn on. The same one I'd used on him that morning. It buzzed for a long time. Way longer than it took me to do half his body. I knew what he was doing. He was shaving the other side to match, making himself completely hairless instead of walking around half and half. The buzzing stopped. Water ran in the sink. More swearing, but quieter this time. 20 minutes after he went in, the bathroom door opened. Kevin came out completely smooth from his neck down to his waist. No hair on his chest, stomach, or arms. His skin looked red and irritated in spots where he'd gone over the same area too many times. His face was even redder. Not from shaving, but from anger. Or maybe embarrassment. Probably both. He stood in the hallway staring at me. Then he asked if I was satisfied now. His voice shook when he said it. I told him I never wanted him hairless at all. Said I just wanted him to understand how crazy his demands were. He could have just listened to me instead of spending 3 days trying to force me into it. Kevin said I could have just talked to him like an adult. Said I didn't need to humiliate him in public at the airport in front of hundreds of people. I reminded him that he gave me an ultimatum. Remove all my body hair or he'd go to Miami without me. He'd already asked his sister to replace me on the trip. He looked away when I said that. Couldn't meet my eyes. His phone buzzed again on the coffee table where he'd left it. He picked it up and his face went pale. Really pale. Like all the blood drained out. He turned the phone toward me. Someone had posted a video of him at airport security. The view count said 847. In the video, you could see Kevin standing at the security monitor. See him looking down at his legs and chest. See the exact moment he realized what I'd done. The camera zoomed in on the line down his body. Perfect split between hairy and smooth. Comments were already piling up under the video. Someone called him half werewolf. Another person asked if he lost a bet. Someone else made a joke about commitment issues. Even the comments arguing about whether it was funny or mean were getting likes. Kevin scrolled through them with his thumb. His hand was shaking. He said I ruined his reputation. Said his friends were going to see this and mock him forever. His voice cracked on the word forever. I reminded him that he told all his friends I was refusing to groom myself properly. He'd sent Josh to lecture me at a party about letting myself go. Kevin looked up from his phone. Said that was different because he was just asking for advice from friends. He wasn't trying to humiliate me. I asked him how telling people I was refusing to groom myself wasn't humiliating. He didn't answer, just looked back at his phone. The video had over 1,000 views now. Kevin admitted he talked to people about our situation, but he said he was just asking for advice on how to help me understand proper grooming. Like I was a child who needed teaching. I got up and went to the bedroom. Got his laptop from where I'd left it on the dresser. Brought it back to the living room and opened it. The forum posts were still up on the screen. All those guides about training your girlfriend. About making ultimatums seem like her idea. I turned the laptop toward him. Kevin's face went completely white. Not just pale, but white like paper. He realized I'd read everything. All his posts about gradually conditioning me. All the advice he'd gotten from other guys about how to manipulate women into meeting their standards. He reached for the laptop, but I pulled it away. Held it up so he couldn't grab it. His eyes went wide and desperate. I started reading out loud from his posts. The one where he talked about slowly conditioning me to accept his standards. The one where he said the beach trip was supposed to be the final push. The one where he asked if threatening to take his sister instead would work. Kevin tried to interrupt, but I kept reading. He'd posted about how I was resistant to feedback. How I didn't understand that women needed to maintain themselves properly. How his ex was so much better about grooming, and he missed that. My voice stayed steady even though I felt sick reading his words. He'd been planning this for weeks, maybe months. The body hair thing wasn't just about the beach. It was about control. Kevin closed the laptop and pushed it away from him. Said those forums were just guys venting about relationship stuff. He told me I was taking everything out of context. His voice got defensive and sharp. I asked him to explain the context where manipulating your girlfriend into body modification was acceptable. He didn't answer. Just stared at the closed laptop like it had betrayed him. His jaw worked back and forth. I waited for him to say something that would make this better. He switched tactics instead. Told me he was only trying to help me be my best self because he loved me. Said he wanted me to feel confident. The word confident came out soft and careful, like he'd practiced it. I asked him why he thought removing my natural body hair would make me confident. Kevin opened his mouth, then closed it again. His newly smooth chest rose and fell under his shirt. He said society had certain standards for women, said he was just trying to prepare me for judgment from other people at the beach, trying to protect me from mean comments and stares. I pointed out that the only person judging my body was him. Nobody else had said a single word about my appearance until he told his friends I was refusing to groom myself. Kevin's eyes got wet. Actually wet with tears forming at the corners. He said I didn't understand how much pressure men face to have attractive girlfriends. His voice cracked. Said his friends were already commenting on my appearance and he felt embarrassed. The anger hit me so fast my hands started shaking. I felt it spread through my chest and up my neck. He'd been discussing my body with his friends, talking about me like I was some project that needed fixing. I asked him exactly what his friends said about me. Kevin hesitated, looked down at his hands, picked at his thumbnail. Finally admitted they asked if I was letting myself go. His voice got quieter. Said it was because I wore jeans and a sweater to a party instead of a dress. That's what letting myself go meant to them. Comfortable clothes at a casual party. The realization crashed over me like cold water. Kevin had been embarrassed by my normal appearance for months. This wasn't just about body hair. I started thinking about all the times he suggested I wear different clothes, the times he commented on my makeup, the way he'd look at other women and then look at me with this disappointed expression. It all made sense now. Kevin saw my face changing, watched my expression shift from angry to something else, something worse. He tried to backtrack fast, said his friends were idiots and he always defended me, told me he thought I looked beautiful no matter what. But I remembered specific times. Josh making comments about women who didn't try hard enough. Kevin sitting right there saying nothing, not defending me, not shutting Josh down, just nodding along or changing the subject. I stood up from the couch, told Kevin I needed him to leave the apartment for a few hours while I thought. He refused immediately, said it was his apartment too, said he wasn't going anywhere looking like this, gestured at his covered arms and smooth chest. His voice got louder, asked where he was supposed to go when half the internet had already seen his airport video. We stood there staring at each other, both of us angry, both of us hurt. Finally, we compromised. He'd stay in the bedroom, I'd stay in the living room, both of us on our phones trying to process what just happened. Kevin disappeared into the bedroom and closed the door hard. Not quite a slam, but close. I sat back down on the couch and pulled out my phone, started texting my best friend, told her everything, the forums, the manipulation guides, the airport, the video, his friends commenting on my clothes. She responded within seconds, a string of shocked messages, supportive messages, angry messages on my behalf. Then she asked if I was safe, asked if I needed her to come get me right now. The question made me stop typing, made me look at the closed bedroom door. She was worried Kevin might get violent. The thought hadn't even occurred to me until that moment. I looked at our relationship differently after reading those words, wondered what else I'd missed while thinking everything was fine. I texted back that I was fine and would call her later. Kevin stayed quiet in the bedroom for another hour. I heard him moving around, opening drawers, closing them. The bathroom door opened and closed twice. He was probably looking at himself in different mirrors, trying to figure out how bad it really looked. When he finally came out, he wore a long-sleeve shirt buttoned all the way up. The apartment felt hot, but he had the sleeves pulled down to his wrists. He sat across from me on the other couch, cleared his throat, asked if we could talk rationally now, said we both made mistakes, but we could work through this. His voice sounded calm. Too calm. Like he'd been practicing what to say. I asked him what mistakes he thought he made. Kevin leaned forward with his elbows on his knees, said he came on too strong about the grooming thing, should have been more gradual about it, eased me into the idea instead of making it an ultimatum. My stomach dropped. That was exactly what the forum post said. Be gradual. Make it seem like her idea. He still didn't get it. Still thought his approach was the problem. Not the entire concept of controlling my body. I told him the issue wasn't how he asked. It was that he thought he could ask at all. That he believed he had any right to demand I change my body for him. Kevin's face scrunched up. Said I was twisting his words again. He kept circling back to the airport. How I humiliated him in public. Made him look like a freak in front of hundreds of people. Said that was cruel and vindictive. I pointed out he spent 3 days trying to humiliate me into compliance. Left razors on my pillow like some kind of threat. Told his friends I was letting myself go. He shook his head. Said that was different because he was trying to help me. Trying to make me better. Kevin suggested couples therapy. Said we clearly had communication issues we needed to work through with a professional. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, but he ignored it. I told him this wasn't about communication. It was about respect. About his fundamental view that women existed to meet his standards. Therapy couldn't fix that. He'd have to actually believe women were people first, not projects to train and mold. He got defensive immediately, voice rising. Said of course he respected women. He just had preferences like everyone does. Was he supposed to pretend he didn't care about appearance? I reminded him that preferences don't come with ultimatums. Don't involve manipulation tactics from internet forums. Don't require your partner to physically alter themselves or lose the relationship. His face flushed red. Said I was making him sound like some kind of abuser when he was just being honest about what he found attractive. Kevin's phone kept buzzing, vibrating against the coffee table every few seconds. He finally picked it up and his face went pale. Scrolled through notification after notification. The airport video had several thousand views now. His friends were texting, calling, leaving voicemails. I watched him read through the messages. His jaw got tight, fingers gripping the phone hard. He turned the screen toward me, showed me a text from Josh asking what he did to make me that mad. Other friends making jokes about relationship revenge, asking if he lost a bet. One guy sent a laughing emoji with the message about checking your girl's razors before you sleep. Kevin looked genuinely hurt. His friends were mocking him, the same friends who usually backed him up on everything, who agreed women should meet certain standards. Now they were laughing at him. I felt a small twinge of guilt watching his face, seeing how much their mockery stung. Then I remembered the 3 days. The razors on my pillow, the hair removal cream in my shower, Josh pulling me aside at that party to lecture me about proper grooming. Kevin sitting there while his friends discussed my body like I was some kind of problem to solve. My sympathy disappeared fast. Kevin looked up from his phone, asked if I was going to post about this online. Tell people what happened. His voice sounded scared, worried. I said I hadn't decided yet, but I wasn't going to protect his reputation when he tried to manipulate mine. When he told everyone I was refusing to take care of myself. He nodded slowly, stared at his phone screen. He made an offer. Said he'd delete all his forum posts. Never bring up body hair again. Never make any comments about my appearance. If I just told people the airport thing was an accident. Said we could tell everyone he fell asleep weird and I was trying to fix it but messed up. Made it sound funny instead of intentional. I looked at him sitting there in his long sleeves, sweating in the heat, asking me to lie for him. I refused. Told him I wasn't going to make up stories to save him from consequences he earned. His phone started buzzing again. Kevin grabbed it off the coffee table and his face changed as he read the screen. The ringtone got louder and he stared at the caller ID like he was deciding whether to answer. Finally, he swiped to accept and held the phone to his ear. I could hear a woman's voice through the speaker even though he hadn't put it on speakerphone. She was talking fast and loud. Kevin's shoulders tensed up as he listened. The voice got sharper and I caught fragments of words. Something about Miami and ruined plans and that girl. Kevin interrupted her mid-sentence. His voice came out tight and controlled like he was trying not to yell back. He told her they'd talk later. She kept going, but he pulled the phone away from his ear and ended the call. The silence after felt heavy. Kevin set the phone down carefully on the coffee table and rubbed his face with both hands. I watched him sit there processing whatever his sister just said to him. The way she'd said that girl made something click in my head. She wasn't just disappointed about losing a beach trip. She'd been part of this whole thing. The backup plan Kevin mentioned. If I didn't comply with his demands, she was ready to step in and take my place on the vacation. My anger flared up fresh and hot. I'd been so focused on Kevin's manipulation that I hadn't thought about who else might have known. His sister had agreed to this, maybe even encouraged it. Probably told him it was reasonable to expect his girlfriend to meet certain standards. The thought of them discussing my body hair over the phone or at family dinners made my skin crawl. Kevin's phone buzzed with a text and he picked it up again. Read whatever message she sent. His jaw clenched and he typed back quickly. Another message came through and he sighed. He looked at me sitting across from him on the couch. Told me his sister thought he was being too demanding about the grooming thing, but she'd agreed to be backup because she wanted a beach trip anyway. He said it like that made it better. Like admitting she thought he was wrong somehow absolved both of them. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say to that? At least she had some sense, but not enough to tell him no. Not enough to refuse to be part of his manipulation scheme. Just enough to recognize it was wrong while still participating. Kevin set his phone down and watched me. I could feel his eyes on me as I started looking around the apartment. My jacket was draped over the chair by the door. My bag sat on the floor next to the bookshelf. There were pieces of my life scattered everywhere in this space we'd been sharing for 3 months. I stood up and walked to the chair, picked up my jacket and folded it over my arm. Kevin shifted on the couch, asked what I was doing. I grabbed my bag and started collecting things. My phone charger from the outlet by the TV, the book I'd been reading from the coffee table, my water bottle from the kitchen counter. I moved through the apartment gathering items while Kevin watched with growing panic in his eyes. He stood up and followed me into the bedroom. I pulled my overnight bag from the closet and started filling it with clothes. Grabbed underwear from the drawer and a few shirts from hangers. Kevin stood in the doorway watching me pack. His voice came out strained when he asked where I was going. I told him I couldn't stay here tonight. Maybe not any night. I needed space from him and this apartment and everything that happened in it. He stepped into the room and said he'd leave instead if I wanted to stay. That I shouldn't have to be the one to go. I zipped the bag closed and turned to face him. Told him I needed space from all of it. Not just him, but this whole situation. Being in this apartment would just remind me of the 3 days he spent trying to manipulate me. The razors on my pillow, the hair removal cream in the shower, the dinner where he celebrated my compliance. Kevin moved toward the bedroom door and blocked it with his body. He said we needed to figure this out now, that he couldn't handle the uncertainty of not knowing what was going to happen with us. I walked up to him with my bag in my hand. Told him that's exactly how he made me feel with his ultimatum. The not knowing if he'd actually leave me over body hair. The uncertainty of whether I was acceptable to him as I was. I pushed past him and he stepped aside. Went back to the living room and grabbed my jacket. My phone was in my pocket and I pulled it out to text my best friend. Asked if I could stay with her tonight. Maybe longer. She responded within seconds saying yes and asking if I was okay. I told her I'd explain when I got there. Kevin came out of the bedroom and stood in the middle of the living room looking lost. His long sleeves were still buttoned at the wrists despite the heat. He kept tugging at the collar like the fabric was choking him. I texted my friend the address and she said she'd be there in 30 minutes. Kevin tried to talk to me while I waited, kept saying we could work through this if we just communicated better. That relationships took effort and compromise. I sat on the chair by the door with my bag at my feet and didn't respond. Every few minutes he'd try a different approach, asking questions about what I needed from him, promising to change, suggesting couples therapy again. I checked my phone and watched the minutes tick by. When the knock came at the door, Kevin jumped up like he was going to answer it. I got there first and opened it to find my friend standing in the hallway. She looked past me at Kevin and her expression hardened. She walked into the apartment without acknowledging him and picked up my overnight bag. Kevin tried to talk to her, but she completely ignored him. Acted like he wasn't even there. She asked if I had everything I needed and I did a quick scan of the apartment. Grabbed my laptop from the desk and my toothbrush from the bathroom. My friend waited by the door holding my bag and glaring at Kevin's covered arms. She clearly noticed the long sleeves in this heat. We walked out together and I heard Kevin following us down the hallway. My friend's car was parked right out front and she popped the trunk. We loaded my bag and laptop while Kevin stood on the sidewalk. He was still wearing those long sleeves and I could see sweat on his forehead. He looked pathetic standing there. Desperate in a way I'd never seen him before. He asked when I was coming back. When we could talk more about this. I closed the trunk and turned to face him. Told him I'd come get the rest of my stuff in a few days, that we could discuss the relationship then. He nodded and his hand moved to his chest. Scratched at something under his shirt. The newly hairless skin probably itching as it started to grow back. We got in the car and my friend pulled away from the curb. I watched Kevin in the side mirror getting smaller as we drove. He stood on the sidewalk for a long time before finally going back inside. At my friend's apartment, she made tea and we sat on her couch. She asked if I wanted to talk about it and suddenly everything hit me at once. The whole day crashed down, the airport, the video, the fight, his sister, the packing. I started crying and couldn't stop. She held me while I sobbed about my 8-month relationship falling apart. About how it all came down to body hair and control. About how the person I thought I knew had spent weeks planning to manipulate me. She rubbed my back and let me cry until I had nothing left. When I woke up the next morning, my eyes were swollen from crying, and my friend had already made coffee. She handed me a cup and sat down next to me on the couch with her laptop open. She pulled up the airport video and showed me the view count had jumped to over 50,000 overnight. The comments section had turned into a war zone with people taking sides about whether what I did was justified or abusive. Some people were calling me a hero for standing up to manipulation, while others said I violated Kevin's body autonomy and was just as controlling as him. There were entire comment threads debating relationship boundaries and whether revenge was ever acceptable. Someone had made a slow-motion version of Kevin's face when he saw himself on the security monitor, and it had thousands of likes. My friend scrolled through the comments, reading some out loud and asking if I was okay with how public this had become. I told her I hadn't expected it to go viral, but I also wasn't sorry people were seeing what happened. She asked if I wanted her to report the video or try to get it taken down, and I said no, because Kevin had been perfectly willing to publicly shame me to his friends about my grooming habits. I spent most of that day on my friend's couch scrolling through my phone and avoiding Kevin's texts. Around noon, I created a throwaway account on a relationship advice forum and typed out the whole story from the beginning. I included everything about the manipulation forums I found on his laptop and the guides about gradually training girlfriends to meet standards. I posted screenshots of some of his bookmarked threads with usernames blocked out so people could see the actual language these guys were using. I explained how he'd spent 3 days leaving razors on my pillow and sending me articles about feminine hygiene and what men really want. The post was long and detailed, and I hit submit before I could second-guess myself. Within an hour, I had over 100 responses, and the number kept climbing. Almost everyone was supportive, and many people shared their own experiences with partners who tried similar manipulation tactics. Several women wrote paragraphs about how their boyfriends or husbands had used the exact same escalation strategy, starting with small comments about appearance and building to ultimatums. One woman said her ex had bookmarked the same forums, and she recognized the phrasing Kevin had used about helping me be my best self. The validation felt overwhelming after spending days questioning whether I'd overreacted. By that evening, I had dozens of private messages from women thanking me for exposing those manipulation forums. They said their partners had used similar tactics, and they hadn't realized it was a coordinated strategy until reading my post. Some women sent me screenshots of their own boyfriends' browser histories showing the same forums and guides. One message was from someone who said she'd been slowly removing more and more body hair over the past year because her husband kept making comments, and she finally understood it wasn't just his personal preference but something he'd learned from these online communities. Another woman told me she'd confronted her boyfriend with my post, and he'd admitted to reading those forums and trying to implement their advice. I sat on my friend's couch reading message after message and realized this was so much bigger than just my relationship with Kevin. There was an entire network of men teaching each other how to manipulate women into changing their bodies, and the women had no idea it was happening. Kevin started texting me constantly after the first day. His messages alternated between apologizing for everything and accusing me of trying to destroy his reputation. He'd send long paragraphs about how he understood now that he'd been wrong, and he wanted to work things out, followed by angry texts calling me vindictive and saying I'd humiliated him on purpose. He claimed the airport thing was assault, and he could press charges if he wanted to, but he was being generous by giving me a chance to apologize first. Then he'd switch back to saying he loved me, and we could get past this if I just came home so we could talk. I mostly ignored the messages, but I screenshot every single one and saved them in a folder on my phone in case I needed documentation later. My friend told me to block his number, but I wanted to see what he was saying and track his mental state. Some of his texts were sent at 3 in the morning and made no sense, like he'd been drinking or wasn't sleeping. He kept asking why I wouldn't respond and saying the silent treatment was cruel and immature. On the third day, I decided I needed to get the rest of my stuff from the apartment. My friend offered to come with me and bring her boyfriend for backup in case Kevin got aggressive. We drove over around noon, figuring Kevin would be calmer during daylight hours. I used my key to open the door and called out that I was there to pack my things. Kevin came out of the bedroom and I actually gasped when I saw him. He'd shaved his head completely bald, not just trimmed, but razor shaved down to the scalp. His body hair had grown back enough to be visible stubble on one side and smooth skin on the other, which somehow made the contrast even more obvious. He stood in the living room doorway with his bald head shining under the overhead light and said he wanted to show me he understood what it felt like. My friend's boyfriend stayed by the front door while my friend followed me toward the bedroom to help pack. Kevin kept trying to talk to me while I pulled clothes out of the closet and stuffed them into garbage bags. He explained that he'd spent the last 3 days thinking about what I said, and he finally got it. He said when I shaved him without his permission, he felt violated and exposed and vulnerable, and that's exactly how his demands about my body hair must have made me feel. He talked about how uncomfortable he'd been going out in public with his half-shaved body, and how people stared and made comments, and he realized that's what he'd been trying to make me avoid by insisting I remove all my hair. He said he understood now that he'd been controlling and manipulative, and he was genuinely sorry. I kept packing and told him it was good that he finally understood, but it felt like too little too late. He'd had to experience the violation himself before he could empathize with how his behavior affected me. My friend carried bags out to the car while Kevin followed me around the apartment trying to explain his revelation. He pulled out his phone and showed me he'd deleted all his forum bookmarks and left the online communities. He said he'd been sucked into toxic masculinity spaces, and they'd warped his thinking about relationships and women's bodies. I packed up my books and bathroom stuff while Kevin watched sadly from the couch. His bald head made him look different, younger somehow, and more vulnerable without the hair he'd always been particular about styling. He asked if there was any chance we could start over with everything out in the open, and both of us being honest about our expectations. I sat down on the chair across from him with a box of my things on my lap, and told him honestly that I didn't think I could trust him again. The manipulation had been too calculated and went on for too long. He'd spent weeks planning how to control my body, and even after I found the forums, he'd tried to justify it, instead of immediately recognizing how wrong it was. I explained that trust was the foundation of a relationship, and once it shattered like this, I didn't know how to rebuild it. He nodded slowly, and I could see him processing what I was saying. His hand went to his bald head and rubbed the smooth skin like he was still surprised to find no hair there. Kevin accepted my decision with more grace than I expected. He said he knew he'd messed up badly and understood if I couldn't forgive him. He admitted he'd been selfish and controlling and had prioritized his preferences over my comfort and autonomy. He talked about how the airport incident and the viral video had forced him to confront his behavior in a way nothing else could have. He said he was planning to talk to a therapist about why he felt the need to control his partner's appearance and where those impulses came from. He asked if we could at least part as friends eventually once some time had passed and the hurt wasn't so fresh. I told him maybe someday, but not now, because I needed space to process everything and figure out who I was without his constant input about how I should look. My friend came back inside and picked up the last 2 boxes while her boyfriend grabbed my lamp and desk chair. Kevin stayed on the couch watching us clear out my belongings piece by piece. As I was carrying the last box toward the door, Kevin stood up suddenly and asked me to wait. He disappeared into the bedroom and came back with an envelope. He handed it to me and said it was the money he'd spent on the wax appointment that I'd never used, plus the 2 plane tickets to Miami that were still unused and transferable. He said I should take a trip with my friend instead since the tickets were already paid for, and someone should get to enjoy the beach. I opened the envelope and saw several $100s in cash along with the printed ticket confirmations. I asked if he was sure, and he said he wanted me to have something good come out of this mess. My friend raised her eyebrows at me from the doorway but didn't say anything. Kevin walked us to the door and stood there while we loaded the last box into the car. He looked small standing in the apartment doorway with his bald head and mismatched body hair growing back in patches. I got in the passenger seat and my friend drove away while I watched him in the side mirror until we turned the corner. 2 weeks later, my friend and I were lying on beach chairs in Miami with the ocean stretching out in front of us. The sand was hot and white, and the water was that perfect turquoise color you only see in vacation photos. I was wearing my bikini with my natural body hair on full display, and my friend was next to me in her one piece with her unshaved legs crossed at the ankle. Neither of us had removed anything beyond our normal grooming routines, and we didn't care who saw or what they thought. Other people on the beach walked by, and nobody stared or commented or seemed to notice our body hair at all, because most people were too focused on their own vacations to care. My friend took a photo of both of us with the ocean in the background, and I posted it to my social media with the caption, "Proper grooming is whatever makes you comfortable." I didn't tag Kevin, but I knew he still followed my account and would see it eventually. The post got hundreds of likes and dozens of comments from women saying they needed to hear that message. I turned off my phone and put it in my beach bag and ordered another drink from the bar. My friend asked if I felt closure about the whole situation, and I said I didn't know if closure was the right word, but I felt free. Free from someone else's standards and expectations, and free to exist in my body exactly as it was. The sun was warm on my skin, and the ocean breeze felt perfect, and I realized I was genuinely happy without Kevin trying to control how I looked or who I was supposed to be.